Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. Guess who made it to the final of the Lanke Cup of this year?
Jinseo, you're the champ, make a moyo, playing like an AI, marrying a K-pop star. Someday you my uncle's fate. They can't say your name. Can you teach me how to play Sanran? Say singing, we will, sun sun. We will, sun sun. Yifei, you're a gangster, cast dog, taking all the corners, winning by 0.5 points all day. You got a killer, you'll aim, Chinese buffet. If you lose, we will send you to Uruguay. Singing, we will, sun sun, sing it. We will, sun sun. Buddy, you are high Q, low than dying. Go take, gonna make you keen on OGS someday. You got your dragon slain, but it's okay. Let's take you out on a Joseki date. Singing, we will, sun sun. Everybody, we will, sun sun.
Yifei is playing as black and Shin Jinseo is playing as white. The game starts out like this. White takes the corner and we have a very basic Sansan Joseki. Black does the same, and at this point Shin Jinseo is inviting a flying knife Joseki. Yifei says, no, I'm not interested. I know you're a god at those stuff, so I'm not going to play that. Very smart choice. So at this point, white comes back and also encloses his corner, and Yifei plays out a very simple follow-up. This is always a very big follow-up that's worth a move. So if you don't know what to do, always play what black played here. White now starts an attack on the 3 stones. Black doesn't even answer. Black goes for the counter attack. And white now plays the pincer. Black plays the big Keima, an AI move. And here Shin Jinseo plays the AI recommended move. So we can see that, Shin Jinseo is definitely very well prepared when it comes to early game with AI. Because normally we would think about things like hopping into the center, but I mean, those are playable, they're just not optimal according to AI. This move is a little bit counterintuitive because it's just trying to protect the security of the 5 stones here. It doesn't seem to be accomplishing much, but it actually happens to be AI top recommendation. So black now attaches into white. This is not the AI top choice. And of course, Yifei knows what the AI top choice is, right? There are 2 choices. One is for black to counterattack the stone over here. The other one is for black to get some shape over here, right? If white plays the fix, then black is going to come back and attack white like this. But today, Yifei's strategy is really to take Shin Jinseo out of the book and try to gain an advantage in the early game. White Hane's on top, black extends, and white extends. And here Yifei plays out a Keima in the center, trying to connect the 2 groups. White pushes on top, and black now attaches white. White patiently extends down, black Hanes, and now white goes for a counter attack. So here, if black blocks, then white's going to cut, and this is going to be awkward for black. If black extends, then white can turn and push over here. And we can see that black is collapsing locally, because if you block, white is going to cut, and black lost all the stones over here. And of course, if black extends out, then white's going to push out, and we can see that black is broken into pieces. So that cannot happen. So instead of responding locally, which black can Hane on the outside and hold this. But actually, Yifei uses this opportunity to make this game super chaotic. The next move, he cuts over here. It's a very aggressive move. The idea of this move is to actually sacrifice this cutting stone. Here, white can easily capture the stone, right? So white can Hane first, black protects, and white can Atari. If black tries to run, this is not going to work because white can simply push a bunch of times. And we can see that black is just dead. White can also block here. I'm pretty sure black is dead as well. So why did Yifei play a move like this, right? You cut, and then white Atari, and you're just dead. Well, the reason is because Yifei wants to strengthen the center by making use of the shortage of liberty that white has. White extends in the center, and now black can just Tanuki because the center has been dealt with, right? So this stone, it was very threatening, but not anymore after the maneuver and the sacrifice. Black can take the initiative on the outside. If white goes for an attack, then black can push it first, right? We can see that this stone still has a lot of value in terms of, the liberty that white has here. White has to extend, and then black can now fight white like this, right? Because black is quite strong here. So that is the goal from Dang Yifei when he cuts like that. Shin Jinseo obviously understood that, and therefore he jumps towards the center, not giving Dang Yifei the chance to easily sacrifice the stone. Dang Yifei attaches, white extends, and black now plays out a Tsuji to attach on the third line. Very well played, because you don't want to extend. This is a very vulgar move, because white now crawls on the third line. You can just feel like, the two stones here are feeling very uncomfortable. Because your extension is a sente anytime, then you can play this attach. But what's great is that black actually plays the attach first, reserving the choice of, later on extending. This is a very advanced tactic. White now extends on the second line, protecting the corner, and now black extends towards the center, forcing white to protect, and now black comes back to deal with this attach. White now pushes through, black honeys, white turns, and now black comes back to play the big Keima on the bottom. So here, Shin Jinseo, I think Shin Jinseo could have, or maybe should have, chosen a more peaceful variation, but in the actual game, white turns once and then goes for a very fierce attack against black's formation immediately. This shows that both players kind of want to go into a very fierce fight in this game, which is very exciting. All right, now black pushes on top, white honeys, black cuts, and white now extends on the third line. Looks like a very dangerous situation for black. Black now blocks, making sure that, yes, my group is in trouble, but what about your group over here? White has to deal with that group first. Black attaches, white extends, and now black Atari and try to get the 5 stones on the left out. White extends, black pushes, and white keeps extending. And at this point, black connects in the center, and white plays the Kosumi towards the center, trying to run out. Here, a better variation is for white to Atari first, and then push, right? Immediately challenge black's weakness in the center. If black plays the Atari, which he kind of has to, white can Atari, black captures, and white can capture the stone on the 5th line. We can see that by spending a move, white gained a lot of territory by capturing the 2 stones, but also the fact that white is now secure has a lot of value. And the outside is still a very chaotic fight. So white should have gone for this variation to make things a little bit easier. But Shin Jinseo went for chaos, and he Kosumi towards the center. Black now jumps towards the center, a very nice move. The reason is you can't really push because my squeeze here is a sente. I have a cutting point here. So next up, we have white honeys controlling the 3 stones over here. Black connects, and white also connects, making sure that all the profits are claimed over here. So white gained a lot of profits on the side, but black was able to build a very strong group, and therefore these 6 stones will suffer a lot. Black now jumps, white protects the corner, and black comes back to fix the very serious weakness in the center. White now has to run out, black attaches, white peeps first, and then extends towards the center. Black pulls the stone back, and white now turns. And here the idea for black is to absolutely not let white connect. If white managed to connect the 2 groups, then that would be disastrous for black, because black has nothing left, and white just has a lot of profits here. So black is going to cut this line off and making sure he can attack both groups at the same time. White tries to resist that. Black double hane, white Atari, black connects, white now extends. Black also pushes, very fierce variation. White counter pushes, black hanes, white hane, black extends, and white pushes once again. There's a very serious hane over here, so Dang Yifei decides to play solid and just defend it with a very efficient move. But then the consequences of you spending a move here is that white gets this very serious move, and black now has to run for life. So black jumps towards the 4th line, and now white also has to jump over here, making sure that this group is not going to be killed. Black now plays the tiger's mouth, white extends, and black goes for total aggression. So this is the funny part. I think at this point, if Dang Yifei was playing against any other opponent, he would have definitely blocked here, and this is totally his style. His style is very territorial, and he's very good at endgames, and he loves this type of move. Not only thick, but also a lot of territory. And this is not a bad move at all, right? This is probably the AI recommendation. But in the actual game, because he's playing against the #1 in the world, he wants to fight really hard. And he probably was told by his coach that the only way to win against Shin Jinseo is to fight as if there were no tomorrow. Like as if this is yeah, it's just you have to fight Shin Jinseo to win the game. You can't expect to win in the end game. All right, so being challenged like this, Shin Jinseo is facing a lot of problems. There's a lot of cutting points. So white decides to attach on top. Black Hanes and white connects. Here, white cannot really resist because if you play the Hane, black can Atari and then cut. And we can see that when white connects, black also connects, and all of a sudden, this group is in serious trouble. It's probably dead. So that cannot happen. So in the actual game, white connects, black extends, and white cuts. The cut also forms a tiger's mouth, so now white is connected. Black now extends, making sure you can't capture that stone, and white now jumps towards the upper corner, trying to just survive. Black now pulls the stone out. This is asking a question. This is only one eye, so do you want to play the tiger's mouth to live? White decides to go for a counterattack, and black now cuts. The next move, white plays the jump. So this is a slight inaccuracy by Shin Jinseo, and it's quite an important inaccuracy. A better move for Shin Jinseo to play is to actually play a Tsuji first. Now, the reason this is a very important Tsuji is because when black, so first of all, black has to connect. There's no other way to deal with this, right? If you Atari, white Atari, this is connect and die. If you Atari here, then I Atari, this is also connect and die. So the shape here is very weak for black. Black has to connect like this. And then the reason you want to do this exchange is now when you jump, when black plays the Atari, we can see a difference. Because white can now run. When you Atari, I connect. And when you block on the second line, all of a sudden we see the power of this exchange is that white can cut here. Black connects, white connects. And we can see that black is in serious trouble. Like this group is probably going to die. So that's the importance of exchanging this move. Now, did Shin Jinseo see this move? Absolutely, right? Like, I'm pretty sure a lot of my viewers who are in the high dan level or mid dan level can easily spot this kind of Tsuji. If we can spot this Tsuji, I mean, Shin Jinseo can see this in 2 seconds. The reason Shin Jinseo didn't play this is that because he was worried maybe about the Aji that black has here because of the extra stone here, right? Black has a wedge. When white Atari, black can cut over here, and white takes, and we can Atari. So this Tsuji comes with a huge cost. Like there's a problem, a very serious one for white. If white connects, there's a ko, right? So it means that this group might be captured with a ko. So that is why Shin Jinseo did not play that, not because he didn't see it. And go is really hard. Sometimes you think your move is a Tsuji, but then after you play your Tsuji, you hurt some other group, and then all of a sudden you just lost. And that's really difficult. So it's more like a choice, right? Shin Jinseo decides to not exchange that, but of course that turns out to be an inaccuracy. He should have exchanged that because at this point, when black Atari, white has to give up the stone. That's the problem. White cannot run anymore because black can Atari and then block. Now white has to go back and live this group, right? There's only one eye, so this move has to be played. And now we can see you can never get the squeeze anymore, right? Because when you squeeze out Atari, and then there's nothing. So black is already connected, and now black can make a very serious problem here for white. Black can Hane first, attaching to white, forcing white to connect, and now black connects. We can see that the corner is in trouble. There's still a second line Hane, which is also very fatal for white. So if black plays out like this, white is going to lose the game. That's why you cannot run at this point anymore, because you didn't exchange the squeeze here. Shin Jinseo chose another variation, that is to push through here. Black captures, white turns, and black now plays a beautiful exchange here, and letting white crawl on the second line and claim the profits. Black plays the Hane, white Atari, and black plays the Tiger's Mouth, threatening the life and death over here. White now goes for a counterattack. Before white lives here, white also want to challenge the 4 stones here. So now black jumps on the second line to extend the liberties. White also jumps on the second line, making sure that his group is just fine. And black now plays the Keima to get back home. White also spends another move to block on the second line, making sure that this group is just fine and alive. And after this, black decides to play an Atari. White extends, a very nice move by Shin Jinseo. A lot of us would just play like this. This would be a big mistake because later on black can save this stone in Sente. Right? I can play the Tiger's Mouth looking at the throw in here. So when you spend a move to defend it, means that I save the stone in Sente. Means that my group is not having life and death issues. This is a very big deal, right? So when white plays here, then when you Atari, we can see that you didn't really save the stone. I can capture your stones at any time. So extending here looks like a weird minor detail, but it's actually very important. All right, so after extending over here, because the fact that white didn't get the exchange over here, the game is slightly better for black at this point. But when you look at the board, this game is still completely chaos. There's still a lot of chances for both players to make mistakes, and we will see twists and turns. If you want to dive deeper and support what I'm doing, check out my Patreon. I regularly post exclusive high-quality content on Joseki's, pro game breakdowns, and even full courses. Stuff you won't find anywhere else. The link is in the description. Thanks so much. Let's continue. Alright, next up, we have black jumping in the center, keep pressuring white's dragon over here. This is kind of an uncomfortable situation for white. And this is a very important point of the game. I think this is like the deciding moment of the game, actually. In the actual game, white played the wedge. It looks like a very nice Tsuji, but actually turns out to be a questionable move. So let's first talk about what white should have played. White should have just played what a lot of us would have played, that is to run for life, because your dragon is not alive. So against this, black is going to keep pressuring. White can haunt into the corner, black blocks, white Atari, and now black plays an exchange over here and then come back and fix the weakness, right? You can't attack white too hard here. If you try to attack again after this Atari is done, then white has a counter attack over here, right? Looking at the peep and then block here. And black is in trouble, actually. So black has to play like this, and then white will have no problem living here because white has quite some ice space. So white is going to be fine and live the dragon, and they're going to go into a close endgame. The close endgame would be slightly better for black, and Yifei is one of the best endgame players in the world right now. So I think it's still going to be a pleasant game for black, but at least this is not collapsing for white. Now, in the actual game, Shin Jinseo played a wedge here. It looks like a Tsuji, but actually, as I said, turns out to be a bit of a fake Tsuji. But the reason white played like this is not as simple as we think, right? And for someone like Shin Jinseo, the #1 in the world, he's not going to play a very simple fake Tsuji. He knows that this wedge and pullback would strengthen black's center, which means that the dragon is it's even more dangerous than before because black is very thick here. Now the reason he plays these two moves is to gather enough strength to now play the next move, that is to counter attack here. And this is quite a ferocious counterattack because black's shape, you can see there's a lot of problems. And this is a very strong move if black doesn't play accurately. So a lot of times in my commentary, I find a difficulty in terms of making commentaries is that if I was going to talk about what the players were thinking all the time, then my videos can easily go to 2-3 hours because there's so many variations that these top professionals would read out in their head. So my job is to kind of talk about the main ideas so we can enjoy the game and we can hopefully also learn something. But today I want to make a little bit of an exception. I want to kind of talk about what is inside Shin Jinseo's mind when he was playing the wedge and pull back. Because when I was watching, I watched at least 4 commentaries on this game because there's so many people commenting on this game. And all of them were professionals, and they didn't talk about this, and they were just like, oh, this is a fake Tsuji. How come Shin Jinseo played this, right? Was he trying to just apply time pressure on Dang Yifei? Was he just like not in a good state? I don't think these professionals are correct on that because there's a lot of readings that Shin Jinseo did, and they didn't talk about it, right? Which I find to be kind of weird. Well, I don't find it to be weird, but because these professionals, when they do commentary, they also think about the same thing as I do, because most of the viewers are not professional players. So when you dive too deep into these variations, that could just like kind of lose them. But today I want to kind of show you how much a professional like Shin Jinseo in a final has to read out. So when white plays the peep here, first of all, white has to read out what happens when black connects over here. right? So the branches goes like this. White now has a very famous Tsuchi that is to attach here. Okay, so this is already a pretty hard move to see, but maybe not for Shin Jinseo. So now he has to read out what happens when black connects. We can block here. Black cuts, white Atari, black extends, and white plays the tiger's mouth. So first of all, Shin Jinseo has to read out this. He has to think about, okay, is this position better for me or not? Because black gained a bigger corner than before, and we managed to get out. Then he realizes, okay, this variation is fine for me because this would be actually great for white because when you turn here, I can capture stone. So my dragon is very comfortable. This is probably a leading game for white. Okay, that's variation number 1, right? Then he has to read out what happens here. It's like, okay, that obvious doesn't work because white push and cut and then block over here, right? There's a miai of blocking and also capturing black over here. So very quickly, he has to know that, you know, connecting or extending out is not going to work. But then he has to read out this variation, right? And this is a lot more complicated because when you push and cut, it looks like black is collapsing, but black can actually just block here, right? When you black can Atari like this, the fact that you captured one stone doesn't mean it's good for you. You still have a false eye, and black can still try to kill you, all right? So Shin Jinseo also has to read out this, and he's like, okay, maybe I can turn here, right? Forcing you to extend, and then he has to read out a bunch of variation after that, and he also has to read out what happens when he plays the peep here. So I think what's happening here is that this locally doesn't work for white, but because this stone is really weak, that makes this counterattack really strong. All right, so Shin Jinseo has to read out this as well. So that's the variation hiding behind connecting here. He also has to think about what happens when black plays here. Then we have a push and cut happening, right? So first, that's variation number 1 inside this branch variation. Okay, so if black plays here, then obviously it's not going to work for black because white plays Atari and wedge and black is broken. But then what happens when black resists like this? Well, we can capture like this, right? So Shin Jinseo has to read this out, and this is working for white. But then Shin Jinseo also has to read out what happens when black counterattacks. White has to block, black cuts, and there's a liberty fight. So that takes time to read out as well, right? White Atari, you connect, and white plays a tiger's mouth. And what happens in this liberty fight? So in his game, he cannot just play this out on the board. He has to imagine this situation in his head, and he has to read out that white is going to win by 1 liberty. I mean, when we look at the board right now, I don't even instantly know this is black kills white or white kills black. But then if we play a few moves in, we can see that this is going to be white kills black, right? As we can see, white has 3 and black has 2. So Shin Jinseo has to read out all of these variations, making sure there's no mistake inside his reading. One misstep, he's done. Like in a fierce fight like this, he's just out of the game. But then he read out everything, but then he forgot one branch. That's exactly what Dang Yifei played in the actual game. That is the push here. And then he's like, oh shoot, I didn't read this. I just forgot this variation, and this is the variation that kind of made this wedge and pull back a bad move. So the reason this is a really strong variation for black is that it doesn't matter what white plays here, right? If white spends a move to respond to this means that this Kosumi doesn't exist anymore because the cutting point here. When black doesn't have to worry about this group, then black can just fight you, like even by connecting here, right? When you play here, as I said, we can use that variation and go into that previous line where it's still going to be difficult for white because you don't have this counter attack anymore. So at this point, Shin Jinseo realizes his reading mistake, and then he connected over here. Black connects, white pushes, black blocks, and white Atari. Black extends on the second line. All of these are top AI recommendations. Means that at this point, you can also see that Dang Yifei is like under Boyomi, so time pressure, but he played every move correctly, which is very impressive. And at this point, Shin Jinseo realizes that if he just goes ahead and live, which is what AI would have recommended, what's going to happen is that this is just a worse game for white at this point, because white can live like this, but black gained a lot of thickness on the outside. So later on, if black plays here, we can see so much more territory over here, right? And yeah, and white just doesn't have enough territory to compete. and he's playing against one of the best endgame players. So Shin Jinseo decided to go for a gamble, right? Instead of just like lose in a peaceful way, Shin Jinseo decided to cut here and cause a very fierce fight, because at this point he's still not in Boyomi, but Dang Yifei is. All right, let's see how that fight goes. Black extends out, white now jumps, and black blocks, and here white decides to extend the stone out, causing problems in the center. Black Atari and white plays the Keima in the center. Black has to defend that. White captures, black extends, white blocks, all Sente moves, and at this point Shin Jinseo plays a very tricky move. And this is a very important point in the game as well, right? If I was playing black, I would probably fall into a trap or two, and then I just lose the game. For example, if I panic, right, I play an extra move to protect my 3 stones without reading, this is going to be a disaster, because now white can go for the counter attack over here. When you cut, I can bump into black, and when black captures, white can just Kosumi out. And now it's white kills black. This whole thing is just dead, right? So Dang Yifei cannot afford a single mistake in his Boyomi time, which is very impressive. In the next move, Dang Yifei decided to clamp here, which is the correct move, making sure there's nothing here. And white now connects. So if white tries something else to capture the 3 stones, for example, turning here, black is going to jump. When white extends, black will just play the bamboo. And that's also squeezing white. White has to connect, and black can play the Kosumi to get back home. So that doesn't work. What about the jump here? If white jumps, black pushes and Atari, and black has a very ugly looking Tsuchi move. When white extends, black can throw in first, and then Atari, and then push. And we can see that this is just not going to work for white, right? So that doesn't work either. Therefore, in the actual game, white actually connects. Black now blocks on the second line. This is probably the trickiest line. And at this point, Dang Yifei plays very correctly by playing the Keima, and this would get these guys back home. If white tries to challenge that, for example, if white plays the attach, then black can simply Hane. When white cuts, black can pull the stone back, and white seems to have this move to block the connection, but then black can extend on the first line. We can see that black has no problem getting home. And of course, if white just captures like this, then black can Atari on the first line and also get back home safe. What about white attach in a different direction? Well, black can now bump into white. White pushes, black will cut. If white plays the tiger's mouth, black will simply drag the stone back. White plays the Hane, then black can Atari on top. When white connects, black can block here. We can see that this is black kills white inside. You can get this Atari, no problem. The problem is you can't really catch these guys here. So you Atari, I can just get out. So I don't care what happens in the corner. If this whole dragon is dead, then I don't care what happens over here. So that doesn't work for white. If white Atari on top, then black can simply sacrifice the stone. And then Atari, right? Once again, you gain some profit, but your dragon is dead, and that's game over. So these challenging moves are not going to... basically, the point is, black's connection is temporarily safe, so white cannot immediately challenge that. In the actual game, Shin Jinseo decides to deal with the dragon and trying to live. Black connects in the center. White plays the Hane. This Hane adds an extra move, so the variation is going to change here. Therefore, Dang Yifei is very cautious, and he plays another move, making sure there's absolutely no problem. And white now bumps into black. White's plan is actually try to do a liberty fight against this entire dragon that black has. Let's see if that's going to succeed. Black captures the stone in the center. White now Atari. Black now plays another Tsuchi. Every step the way you have to be so careful, because everything is a trap against these 9-dan professionals. If you block here, then white's going to capture. When you connect, then there's an Atari, and this becomes a Ko. And that will give white a lot of hope. So black has to play correctly by playing the triangle. That's a very nice Tsuchi. White captures, black connects, and then white plays the connect in the center. That's a must-play move if you want to start a liberty fight. And now black attaches in the way. That's the shape move. White plays the Kosumi, black connects in the center, white Atari, and black now. So black now doesn't, it's not alive either. So when this becomes a liberty fight, then white might have some hope. So black now has to exploit white's weaknesses over here. Black Honix, white Atari, and black now pushes in the center. When white blocks, here black can cut, and that's the most serious problem. This is the final strike, really, because if white plays the Atari, black and Atari first, this forces white to capture like this, then black can simply Atari, squeeze Atari over here, and this is kind of game over for white, because if you connect, I can take, right? But if you take here, then I can Atari. This is not really a code because I can capture your stone here. And black doesn't have to liberty fight these guys, but they can just, fight these guys, and then that's game over. So when black cuts over here, this is already kind of over for Shin Jinseo because the center is like dead. So Shin Jinseo finally tries to, come back and see if he can live the dragon. Black decides to play really safe here. Black could have also played the Kosumi and just, this would kill the dragon actually. But Yifei decided to not do that and just play really safe and hope Shin Jinseo would resign soon. White now plays the squeeze, that's a Sente, and then form an eye over here. Black plays the squeeze, and finally white cuts in the corner, black Atari, and at this point Shin Jinseo resigned. Now, the reason Shin Jinseo resigned is that, first of all, this group, as we have said that this group is just dead. And also this group has to die in order to live, right? So if white decides to connect, then black connects. There's no eye over here, right? This is an eye, by the way, right? The tricky part is that this is an eye. For example, if white connects here, first of all, black cannot fill in like this, right? We can play this out. We can see there's an eye. But this is also an eye in Sente, right? So if you don't play anything, you play somewhere else, white actually has a Tetsuchi to capture the 4 stones, right? But so if you play here, then I can make use of my first line to capture your group. But what I was saying is that all these doesn't matter. Right? The fact you have an eye here in Sente doesn't really matter. You still have to, I think it's at this point, right? You having one eye is not going to live, so you have to form this eye. And the cost of forming this eye is that you have to sacrifice this group over here. So at the end of the day, this group in the center is dead, and white also has to give up this group, which means that this is going to be almost a 40-point lead on the board, right? So that's more than enough to pay the Komi. Therefore, at this point, Shin Jinseo decided to resign.